Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Midweek Wire. This is part 2 of this episode. We did a start yesterday on this. We're talking about the USIsraeli humanitarian, quote, aid scam that's going on in Gaza right now. We had some technical difficulties. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. Yesterday, we had a few technical difficulties we tried to iron out. Hopefully we did, and we'll also be bringing back our guest from yesterday. So we appreciate your patience and also your feedback as well. Much appreciated. I hope you guys are doing good. This is a big story, and we're not done delving into this. So we're going to do a deeper dive today with a lot more receipts, a lot more details, and also I'm going to bring on my colleague Freddie Ponton up onto the program to help with this. So yeah, hopefully we're firing on all cylinders visually and audio wise for you, our audience. Let me bring Freddie Ponton up onto the stage right now. Freddie Ponton is an independent researcher, a journalist at 21stcenturywire.com. He's also been looking into this absolute, I don't know what to call it. We call it a scam. It's probably the easiest thing that people understand, Freddie. This is an incredible scam. We introduced it yesterday, but we're going to just refresh people's memories that didn't see the program yesterday. What Israel has done, and I'll let you weigh in on this, Freddie. And please don't be afraid to reiterate anything that I've said, because whatever we're saying is important. It needs to be said twice, maybe 3 or 4 times. But what Israel has done with the United States, starting under the Biden administration, is they've demonized the UN Relief Agency. It's called UNRA, the UN Relief and Works Agency. And they provided aid to the Gaza Strip, essential aid, since the mid-1950s. Okay, it was set up to help displaced people and people under occupation, Palestinians in this region. And what the Trump administration, the Biden administration, Tony Blinken, and now Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Benjamin Netanyahu, the criminal government in Tel Aviv, they've managed to demonize UNRWA and to claim that it's been infiltrated by Hamas. Ergo, the UN Agency for Relief is a terrorist organization, according to the U.S. government and according to the Israelis. This is a total lie, 100% lie. So what they've done is, by delegitimizing it, then cutting off aid with the really flimsy excuse that Hamas is being allowed to steal the aid, or some such nonsense. Okay, pure lies. And now the U.S. and Israel are trying to have their own aid delivery to people they've starved intentionally for the better part of the last 18 months, but it's been under blockade and siege really for 17 years. But very much after October 7th, 2023, they've really shut off normal aid deliveries almost to nothing. Okay. And so the U.S. mercenaries and the Israelis, U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, joined forces to basically create a fake aid delivery organization, a fake charity. And the results are nothing short of disastrous. Let me bring Freddie Ponton back up onto the screen. Freddie, go ahead and just kind of fill in the blanks on this. I've just tried to, introduce what's going on here. But this is Donald Trump's big sort of program. This is his solution. Continue to demonize UNRWA, and then this plan to deliver, food and aid to the Palestinians. As you can see, the type of living conditions they're faced with on a day-to-day basis is the worst possible living conditions on the planet Earth right now. But I'll let you take it away. We've got a lot of details to go through, but go ahead, Freddie. What do you make of this situation?
Well, it is a catastrophe. It's a Nakba. It's nothing else. There's no other word to describe what we are saying here. And there's a lot of conflict of interest. There's a lot of politics involved, or trying to be involved with humanitarian help. And that is where the problem is. And we can see that UNRWA is a major problem for Israel, simply because they've advocated for the return of refugees, the right of return for many, many hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, that has been pushed out of Palestine. So they have the right of return, and UNRWA has been advocating for that. So that's politically a problem for Israel. So any way or means possible to shut down UNRWA. And that's by silly accusations that UNRWA is harboring, terrorists and all that. I mean, they've just haven't stopped from the beginning. But really, what's to go on to what you were discussing is what is really interesting is we had 3 months warning about various humanitarian organizations like UNRWA, but also other agencies within the UN, the WFP, UNICEF, you name it. So many organizations said from the get-go that the plan from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was started from the get-go. It just simply doesn't fit the bill. And these are people that have been, as you said, working in this enclave for a very long time. They have developed a relationship with local communities. They're trusted to because simply they understand what it takes to deliver aid to 2 million people. It's not a job for amateurs. And what we have seen so far since Monday is not only a matter time. This is really a project, an initiative that is simply endangering life. And I think that I really want to put the emphasis on that. What they're doing now could really go wrong. And any person that has had the chance or the experience to work for humanitarian aid relief on the large scale, on small scale, on large scale, disasters relief, or even places like Sudan and others, which I've had a chance to spend time in during one of the largest humanitarian crises in the Darfur, where you can see that it takes a lot of organizations, a lot of money, and a lot of planning. Otherwise, you have a disaster in your hands. And I think that what we are saying here is simply a Mickey Mouse kind of proxy organizations that has a few people that are real good experience, if you will. I don't want to obviously disrespect the experience or undermine the experience, but the task is way too big for them. You need structures, you need relationship, you need to be part, and you have to have all this in place to be able to cover 400 sites in the Gaza Strip, small kitchens, which are the lifeline of the people in Gaza. So all that is not in place. UNRWA has been basically told, move aside, we're coming up with the big guys, with the big guns, with the American mercenaries. And this is an Israeli operation, and everybody knows it now. It's an Israeli operation backed up by the United States, period. Patrick, I think you lost the connection.
This is enough for him.
Oh, you're back
to get upset. So yeah, just let me know. Can you see this image on screen, Freddie? Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So yeah, we're going to just roll that sort of B-roll video here. This is from the Washington Post. The UN's condemning the U.S. aid system, they're calling it, in Gaza. We'll let you know exactly what this aid system is. Israel opening fire on the crowd. I mean, talk about a nightmare. But just check out the scene, everybody, of what is going on there. You've got, what are these, military Apaches hovering above, obviously unarmed civilians who have been starved to death. And what are they dropping on the crowd there? I have no idea. White phosphorus or flares or something. When you starve 1.5 million people, or whatever the amount of people there are, there's not going to be orderly queues, Fred, are there? You've got chaos, basically. These people are desperate, and so the military's panicking, firing on the crowd. We have videos of them chucking grenades over the fence at Palestinians asking for food. Believe it or not, we'll show you that video shortly. But Fred, this is just unbelievable. This has never been seen before.
No, it's not.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's never been seen before because this is not how this kind of job is normally handled. The last thing you want to do is to deal with large crowds. That's just simply a very high level of risk, which endangers life. So what you want to do is to go towards the populations. You want to go inside the Gaza Strip, with a plan, with areas where you have friendlies that's going to help you set up kitchens, having small population, small group of people to deal with, so that it's much easier to handle. Now, opening a distribution center without really having a proper kind of safety net in terms of managing this large amount of crowd. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. And that is the reason why on day one, they were only able to distribute 8,000 parcels. And the reason for that is simply because everyone came at the same time. And there's a screening process where they take biometrics, ID check, everything. So want to make sure that, who they're dealing with. And it's an opportunity as well, as I said, to collect a lot of data about the population itself. They might be looking for guys that God knows, but this is something that is, of course, has to do with security, intelligence gathering, and it takes time. And if you don't have a proper screening process that's going to allow you to do that, which has normally have absolutely nothing with humanitarian aid. When you deliver food, it doesn't involve guns. It doesn't involve any of these biometrics and searching people. There are reports that people have disappeared. Some people have never came back to their home after going to the distribution centers. And that's the mess they've created simply because it's just not the humanitarian principles that are being put at work here. What we are doing here, it's political work. It's a political agenda which has taken over the role of larger organizations in order to control an initiative that has to do with a political agenda for the Israeli government / the US government. And that is a major, major problem in my view. When you mix politics, security, and humanitarian principle, aid reliefs, that's the kind of scenes that you get.
Yeah, as people can see, it's just absolutely dire situation. And we'll also just, kind of take a little look at this scene here, and we're showing you some of the worst parts of it because we want to get people just a little bit of a taste of what's actually going on here. Now, this is video, Fred, from one of the, I don't know what to call it. It's a place where a yard where they're keeping food, barbed wire fences, mercenaries inside, Israelis and Americans. Bad combination, by the way, very bad combination to have both of those. So look closely. I want everyone to watch closely, okay? And thanks to Suppress News for laying out all the great information that he does there. He's an absolute warrior. So watch. This is the Israeli army and these mercenaries, Fred, okay? There's thousands of hungry people outside the barbed wire fences. They've come to receive food, whatever they could get. They're begging for food from these jarheads and knuckle draggers from the IDF. I'm being kind. I'm not using any profanity. But when these starving people come to collect the aid, they open fire on them and throw grenades over the fence. 6 of them I counted, okay? Now, are they stun grenades? It looked like stun grenades, I'm not sure. But they're grenades. So this is how they treat the people. So if this is an orderly aid operation, Fred, I would hate to see a disorderly crisis operation. This is just something else. Watch. Another one. Different angle.
هيو كمان. الله يفضح عرض الكونات، عرض الامل.
I mean, Fred, you'd think it was Xerxes and the Persian army, at the gate, at the hot gates, ready to take over Sparta or something. Like, who are these guys? Throwing whatever these grenades are, just chucking them into the crowd. I mean, these are real. This is real street trade. These guys are really something else. So this is the representatives of the United States and the Israeli army. Go ahead.
These are riot control grenades. So these are used for large riots to control crowds, to disperse crowds. Very dangerous, actually, if you pick them up, because sometimes they don't always go off. If you pick them up, you lose your hand. We have had many same issues in France, where people rioting against Macron and others. Been rioting all our life there. So there's been many accidents. People lost their eyes, people lost their hands, their fingers. It's just a very dangerous kind of weapons to use in a place where it's all about aiding people. People are hungry. Don't forget that these young crowds, these are 16 to 20, 25 years old. These kids just simply starving, and they need more food than elder, because they just simply need that proteins, they need that nutrition, because they're growing up, and plus they're under tremendous stress, and then the stress of feeding their own family as well. So there's a level of desperation which prohibits, first of all, the distributions to a large group of people, to have this kind of set up for a large amount of people, over 100,000. It's simply, as I say, endangering life. And I'm not surprised that some people would want to move away from that kind of legal responsibility, because that's what Tom Fletcher, the Undersecretary for Humanitarian Activities at the UN, was warning of. He said, guys, if you don't know what you're doing, and if you do not operate within the principle of humanitarian law and humanitarian relief, those principles are basically charted. So you need to stay in this guideline, and there's a reason why they've been charted, because if you move away from that, from experience in the past in other areas and part of the world, they've proven to work. So that's why everybody adopt them and use them, because they work, and you limit the risk and you protect the population, the civilians. That is the idea. But it's centered about helping people, not controlling people, not trying to tell them where they need to go. Or no, you get to control that. And the way you do that is by going to your population, not let hundreds of thousands of people ending up at your border, at your fences, because that's when people die. That's when people get injured. Stampede happens, riot happens. And then when you get a couple of cowboys there, trigger happy, anything can happen. I can tell you, you would want to be an executive responsible for that. I wouldn't want to put my name on any of the things that happen there, because this is a disaster waiting for to happen. And they should stop right now, because all the process is already in place to deliver food in Gaza, but the trucks outside, because Israelis say that, UNRA is helping terrorists and we don't want to feed Hamas. So all that is pretext. But because of this pretext and these lies, they've come up with a bigger lie, and that's called GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That is the biggest lie today.
Yeah, we'll get to the GHF, because they're the central player here. Sure. And are responsible for that. But I want to show you this this video. Fred, this is from a central distribution center. The crowd broke in this is central Gaza. So I assume these clowns are from the US or Israel are managing this. So they broke in and they're looking for food. 2 people died, probably stampeded, I would guess, maybe shot. I don't have those details in front of me. I'm sure somebody knows. But I'll play this here. I mean, just take a look at this.
ياجوج وماجوج ياجوج وماجوج ماتوا من الجوع حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ياجوج وماجوج حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل على كان السبب حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ازدحام من البراكس فضوا كل مدارس حاجه.
So, what do you expect? What do you expect? Have you ever been to a Ramadan event? with hundreds of people, and the food didn't arrive because I have, and Palestinian event, and listen, the crowd has minimum patience. You get hundreds of thousands or a million people that are hungry. Don't expect there's going to be, everyone's going to be calm and collective and well behaved. These people are literally fighting for their life and the life of their kids. So this scene doesn't surprise me, Freddie, but it's shocking nonetheless.
Mhm. It is shocking, and is really a clear demonstration that they're not in control. And it's not because they're not good at what they do in terms of military and so on. This has nothing to do with your skills as a military. It has to do with organizing humanitarian aid relief is a job. It's a job, and it's a complicated job. And you step into something like this without the required experience and, more importantly, the required infrastructures to accommodate these kind of operations. You're going to face this kind of scenarios where at the end of the day, the person that you are normally there to help is gonna basically his life's gonna be put in danger. And for me, that's really what come out of all this video that's circulating that we've had a chance to review. And it's really the UN Undersecretary for Humanitarian Relief, Tom Fletcher, when he watched that, his first word will be, "I told you, do not do that, do not proceed." And again, the debate has been politicized, saying, "Oh, UNRWA is trying to get back in and trying to justify that, this can only happen if they are involved," and so on. So it's a war against the UN and Israel. But meanwhile, in the middle, you have these proxy organizations coming and doing whatever they can, but because they're not applying the right rules and the right principles, and there's a long list of principles we'll go through in a moment, but it's what you're gonna have. You're gonna have people dying trying to get food for themselves and for their family, and that is the opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah, we'll bring this. Watch this clip here, Fred.
حوالين هذول
So life is cheap as it is, Freddie. So they're firing off rounds. Not that it's going to make much of a difference in this type of environment, but that's kind of like the situation you're dealing with there. Who are these people that they're parachuting in? I mean, they don't know anything about this. They don't know anything about Palestinians or Gaza or whatever. They're going into what they believe is a war zone, and they've employed soldiers to do that. Okay. Somehow it's just a recipe for disaster. But I'm not even an expert, Fred, and I can tell you that's probably not going to work. But you've obviously worked in delivering aid in some of these types of environments. So you're saying this is a complete disaster and probably the worst thing you can do.
You see, in war zone, Patrick, you will find that humans can adapt to most terrible situations because they have no choice. So you adapt. But there's one thing you don't mess around is with food. Because when you start to mess around with food, all hell break loose. Period. It doesn't matter, because when you're hungry, you haven't seen a meal for 3 days, you're not the same person. When you haven't seen a decent nutritional meal for 3 months,
Yep.
you're dangerous. You're dangerous to yourself. You're dangerous because you're weak, but you also have the responsibility of the elders. Don't forget that what you're saying here is that people that are strong, these are the strong one that makes it to the distribution center, not the weak one. The weak one, they stay behind because they can't come. They have to walk 10, 15, sometimes 20 kilometers to make it to the distribution centers. And along the way, a lot of things can happen. They can get shot. We've seen some drones killing kids on their way to pick up food for, for their family. Everything can happen. It's a war zone. At the end of the day, it's still a war zone. That's what you need: an established structures, routes. You need to have your people inside to secure that food, that aid, and you need to do it to spread that effort as much as you can, so you don't deal with large crowds. And that's what's happening here. It's completely out of control, and it's not going to get better. They need to stop right now. Not because I don't want the people of Gaza to get food. Of course, we all want them to get food. But right now, this process endangering their life. And it could really go out wrong. And wouldn't be surprised if we're going to hear something goes bad, unless they're going to shut down these things and let the UN outside the Gaza Strip enter Gaza and do what they do best, because these are professionals, and you cannot replace dozens of years of experience working with communities. The bonds, this proximity with the communities is the key. It is the key to avoid tragedy.
Yeah, and UNRWA was there. They had a permanent place in Gaza. There were 400 plus trucks per day coming in to deliver essential food and supplies, everything. That was promptly shut down by the Israelis after October 7th. And a little bit of trickle aid, a few trucks here and there, probably around 5% of the aid they needed that was allowed in. The rest was their Palestinians are forced to buy stuff on the black market because of all these criminal gangs. As you said, we were talking off air. We can talk about that, but basically it's a free-for-all. So Israel created the conditions for the worst possible disaster here. So this brings us to the story, Freddie, and we're going to bring on some of the pieces that we have at the 21st Century. And I want you to help us tell the story here of this foundation. We'll bring this up on screen right now. We'll just do a switch on our graphics, but here it is. Israel uses colonial war handbook to weaponize food aid. So the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Tell us about, where did this organization come from?
Well, it's really come on the back of this maritime outfit that was put together to deliver aid in the Gaza Strip at the Narim Corridor, with this U.S. Gaza pier, this floating piers that was put together on the Israeli side, and then basically tug into the Gaza shore. It was a complete disaster, as you remember. Things went really, really bad. Things broken up. They had to repair it. And then by the end, we came to realize that this was an undercover military operation using aid relief and humanitarian relief as a cover for a rescue mission, which killed over 200 Palestinians in Deir al-Balah. And this is unbelievable. And of course, when you look at these security firms that at the time was responsible and operating in the areas, though you cannot prove it, but obviously it's really unbelievable that some of them have been reinviting in the areas for this particular job. So back in February 2022, Patrick, to answer your question, Nathan Frederick Mook is known as Nate Mook. He's the former CEO of the World Central Kitchen, and is a close friend, of course, of Chef Rosie Andrews, which everybody has come to know now with this World Central Kitchen operating in Gaza. So Mook basically registered his company in Geneva, this foundation in Geneva in Switzerland. And then very soon after, that same entity popped up in a registration office in Delaware. And that's a very interesting. So, of course, Moot and Jose Andres are close together. And it's funny that why they're deciding to put this little outfit, why were they entrusted with such a large missions where clearly this company has very little experience, not as only as a corporation, because they've only been set up in February 2022. But if you look at the composition of these organizations, you have a CEO that comes from Armenia, is an Armenian national. His name is David Papazian. And David Papazian was the CEO of the Armenian National Interest Fund, known as the Anif. Anif has a long story of really mismanaging this fund for the governments, a lot of corruptions and backhands, you name it. And he was accused and he had to step down from Anif. So how these guys, which obviously has a poor corporate track records in the financial realm, and handing up as a CEO of GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is a mystery. So perhaps those that are more familiar with the intelligence network will understand that perhaps here we're dealing with someone that has nothing to do with humanitarian relief, but more has to do with intelligence. That's my view on it. I'm still working on it. I hope I can bring that up with and substantiate my claim. So that's it. This organization has no track records. We saw, interestingly, that the registration in Delaware in the USA was done by a lawyer named James Kandiff. And James Kandiff, interestingly, was the lawyer who registered the security company known as SRS, the Sephri Solutions, one of the private contractors, military mercenary, which have been appointed to take control of the security at the various, I think there's 4 distribution center in the Gaza Strip. So there is a connection here already from a legal point of view as far as the connections there. And then,
just
of course,
on screen.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Just on
Sure.
screen, we've got this up on screen. Freddie, just tell us what we're looking at.
Oh,
here.
yes, sure. This is basically the certificate of incorporations of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF. And this is just the documents that appear in the state of Delaware when this was registered. So there's a full documents here that is available, where it clearly basically states who's behind, the name and the address of the agents, the corporation trust company, which using obviously a lawyer, which funny as enough has very little to do apart being a lawyer specialized in taxes. So it's all look very, very shady as far as I'm concerned. And I've been looking into screen companies and front companies used by the intelligence community. And if you ask me what this kind of company looks like, I will tell you this is just a front to facilitate the transfer of funds into the operations. So that's the way I look at it. This kind of require a little bit more digging, but we can see a setup in Delaware, tax-free, and then on the other side, Geneva. And very interestingly, we're going to see quite soon some more report about really GHF funding, because this has been a big mystery so far as how this organization is funded, and more importantly, where this fund comes from, Patrick.
Mm-hmm. We'll bring the to reiterate, I want to clarify one detail, but we'll bring up the article here from 21st Century Wire. Some great research you've done here as well, Fred. But just to reiterate, so the current CEO, so David Papazian. So we've got Jake Wood, lower. If you look up on screen here, lower left-hand corner. Jake Wood,
I'm looking at a signature.
He resigned as CEO just recently. Basically almost resigned in protest, from what we can gather from reports, that he didn't feel he could morally and ethically continue with this operation. That's how bad it was. So for him. So who is the current CEO? Because it says you have a new interim CEO, and so is John Acri, or is it David Papazian? Who is the current CEO?
The current CEO is still David Papazian, but what you have is an executive director. So it's very important to understand that you have the executive, the CEO, chief executive officer, then you get a chief operation officer, and you have an executive director. And this executive director is gonna obviously interact with the various parties and the board of directors. So he was entrusted, but he's very interesting. Jack Wood is an interesting character. You know, he's some people call him a war profiteer. So I think this is someone. He was a former U.S. Marine sniper. He ran the disaster relief agency for Team Rubicon. Now, if you know Team Rubicon, you will know what kind of operation these guys ran. And he, as you said, he resigned on Monday, claiming that there was a lack of respect for humanitarian principle and independence from the Israeli governments. That's basically his stance. My view on it, if I can add a word on that, my view on it is the reason why an executive director will resign in such a situation is simply because he does not trust the process that has been put in place. It's been obviously facing a lot of backlash from the Israeli governments, the Israeli military, and he's not in control of his operation. That means that everything that he stands for, everything that is known, that works, and based on the humanitarian principle, is not going to be applied the way it should be applied, and therefore it's going to create an endangerment of life. And as an executive director, if what you're doing knowingly will end up with people losing their life, which means you're endangering your life, then you have legal responsibility. My view on it is Jack resigned because there is a legal implications there where if there is an inquiry in Switzerland that goes further into what this operation is all about, he will be legally responsible. And I think he knew that, and he decided to move. And he was not the only one to resign. If you look on your picture here, you got David Burke as well, the chief operating officer. So when you get executive directors on one side and the COO resigning at the same time on Monday, that it means that these guys don't want to take the hit, because someone is going to go down for this disaster that we are witnessing in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah. The liability worries probably. So the pennies certainly dropped. So there is some oversight with the Swiss authorities, where I guess this is, or part of this is registered in Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken, or
that's right. Yeah, it's in Geneva, in Switzerland.
Geneva. And
it's very interesting because from the get-go, these organizations has attracted a lot of heat.
IPC. Yeah. So just to go through the names, because it is a little confusing. We have the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And they're responsible for managing aid distribution in Gaza. But you also have these other shell organizations that are sort of, beneath it or attached. And then you have the mercenary organizations as well. I don't have the name to hand, unfortunately, but I think you know who I'm talking about. It's the name. I believe it's on one of our other reports.
Yeah, the IPC is a standard, if you will, in terms of if you want to know food insecurity and malnutrition. They do report in snapshot on different countries, not only on Palestine or Israel, or they do it around the world. But they're really a reference. If you're in the humanitarian aid relief world and you want to know the real numbers or numbers that are solid, this is where you go. And if you look at Gaza Strip, it's in the red. It was in the red long time ago. And if you read the report, it's a short one, but it's just a snapshot itself is so telling to the point that at this stage, if you will, it's just incomprehensible. We can't really fathom why the international community has not come together to put an end to this, because at this time, you really put some severe sanction on someone that is capable to do it, publicly, broadcast it, genocide and starvation, for political gain. And that's what this report, if you will, if you were to translate it, is saying, is that people are on the verge of a famine. So you have a large scale populations under the risk of famine. That's what this report is telling you. And it's obviously addressing details about the various members of the communities, from children to women, to young men, to elder, and help understand exactly, who's doing really at the moment that needs the most help, and that which circumstances needs to be improved immediately, because there's already people that have died of malnutrition and ill nutrition in Gaza Strip, more than, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's quite a large number already. So it just should not happen, because there is watchdogs, there are people, there's humanitarian relief, there's a lot of help available. But the only reason why this is allowed to happen is because UN has not been allowed to do their job. And there's more than 15 agencies working in Gaza. So just to tell you that it's not a problem of getting and having people dedicated to Gaza. It's just that the Israelis are blocking and impeding this effort. And that's, for me, as far as I'm concerned, more than a war crime. This is a crime against humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the organizations is Safe and Secure, or I don't have the name. You know what I'm talking about, Freddie? It's connected with this. It's a part of the shell company organization with Gaza, the Humanitarian Foundation. It's, I believe, connected to, I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll try to get that information. It's in quite a few of these articles. We just don't have it to hand. But I'm trying to understand the structure of this, because it seems to have been made intentionally to obfuscate and to create a lot of sort of confusion as to what's what. It really, here we go. Safe Reach Solutions. Safe Reach Solutions. So security would be provided by military contractors like Safe Reach Solutions. So that's up on screen here.
Yeah, that's the company which I just mentioned was actually registered by the same lawyer that registered GHF in Delaware. So Safe Reach Solution, if you will, this is a contractor. So this is one of the security firm that's very shitty and full of mercenaries, basically. And this company
just run by a former CIA agent.
That is correct. Yeah, Chief is actually Chief Philip Riley. So he's a former CIA Special Activities, and he was the head, and still probably is today, the head of Gaza checkpoint for Safe Reach Solutions. So at the Rafah crossing, all the checking point, all that, this was handled by Safe Reach Solutions already back in 2023 and 2024. Sorry, and so there's someone that has build up his relationship with Netanyahu personally, but also with many of the business associates of Netanyahu. And what's interesting is that SRS, the Safe Reach Solution, the security proposal was pushed by Netanyahu business and partners and people that really support his regime. And so there's a real business going on there where Safe Reach Solution is pushed forward. And that is the reason why, as I say, the Knesset and some of the members of the oppositions in Israel are saying that these companies, this is very shady because they've been pushed within Israel, or corporate Israel, if you will. And this is all linked to Netanyahu. And this is the intermediary for this kind of financials and corporate deal is Philip Riley, a former CIA agent. So that's all you need to know. Basically, what you're dealing with here is corporations, security, people that have, of course, this relationship with the Ministry of Defense, the IDF, the intelligence, you name it. And Riley is the kind of the rally point, if you will, between and the interface between the administration, corporate Israel, defense, and then of course the US. And that's why he was entrusted and brought in. So this is this is it's the first one. The other one is UG Solutions. So this is, as I say, two companies supporting GHF because they couldn't obviously put this plan together for aid relief without having military securing that. So IDF take a little bit the back foot, but is trying to control the zone, the areas where the distribution centers are. They have different checkpoints, I'm sure, to limit the number of people that can make it to the distribution center. That's what military will do. And then on the other side, what you have is these two contractors, and the second one is UG Solutions. Now, UG Solution is also an interesting one as well. It was founded by Jameson Giovanni. He's a retired Green Beret from Massachusetts. He's a CIA veteran, nothing more than that. He's actually, interestingly, the founder of counter-trafficking organization known as the Sentinel Foundation, Patrick. Now, if you remember the Sentinel Foundation, they were known for staffing all the checkpoints at the Rafah border and also at the Narim Corridor. And when I started investigating the Sentinel Foundations, I was starting to be able to link them with the paramilitary operation which was conducted from the Gaza pier, the floating pier, which, by the way, killed 60 U.S. military. And there was a Pentagon report that was released just last week or earlier this week that basically says, sorry guys, it's not just 3 or 4 guys that was injured, but actually 60 U.S. Marines injured during this operation. It was a big in operation. It was a interagency operation with the Israeli governments involved as well. And somehow Sentinel Foundations kind of some of the names appeared in my investigations. I think the report from the Pentagon confirms what I thought was really a mishap. But again, what's important here, the lessons is, again, politics, military intelligence, using the cover of humanitarian aid to go to rescue some hostages, and in the process gonna kill more than 200 people, more than 200 people. That's just plain illegal. You don't go there.
And that was to rescue a couple of hostages.
And
which they turned into a big media event. One of them was a female. I think her name was Noah. Something or other, and she was very happy about how she was treated. And then she switched, a week later in the media and said, "Oh, how afraid she was and whatnot." Same story, but they killed a lot of people. And she would have been released in the normal hostage release deal anyway. But Netanyahu, the Israelis, were needed to get a big win because they weren't doing so well, taking huge casualties. The IDF. At that time. But on to this topic, Fred. I'm going to bring this up on screen here because this is the area that you're talking about. Okay. Now, a lot of people, Fred, and this is the important part of this discussion that we need to hammer home. It seems like that these aid distribution schemes are basically being designed to draw people down to the south from the north. It looks like anyway, Fred, to empty the north. They have these concentration camps that they've proposed where they're going to hold, a certain amount of Palestinians in like these kind of tent cities with barbed wire around them. And then the food is in the south, drawing people to the south. And so to me, it looks like they're trying to empty out the north and bring them to the south, probably start bombing them again once they've got them in a close area, and push them out into the Egyptian desert, or they die, basically. I'm being very cynical, Fred, but it does seem to me like this is part of the operation. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the positions, the geolocation of this distribution center, the Rafah crossing is in the Tal Al Sultan neighborhoods of the Narim Corridor. So that's the one important place. And these centers now, as I said, have been located at strategic place. You got one in the central Gaza City, the Al Bala. and then you get Khan Yunis as well. So this is about baiting the population, right, to concentrate them, to force them, to almost make them dependent on food distribution, not allowing these small kitchens, because the lifeline of Gaza is really these small kitchens that have been set up all across, that are supported by the Humanitarian and the United Nations and other smaller outfits that are making a huge difference, because it avoids displacements. A lot of people are sick, injured, traumatized, I mean, you name it, elder. So to avoid that is the small kitchens. The problem, what we've seen recently, is that Israel has targeted this particular small kitchen, and they're absolutely vital. They alleviate so much suffering and pain. So they this is where you get your daily meal. If you're a child, if you're young, if you want to feed your elders, you're going to go and get what recently all they have is a kind of a thin soup of food. And even to get that thin soup, they have to risk their life, because there have been now many of these small kitchens that have been actually targeted by the IDF. Can you imagine? I mean, you're targeting these small kitchens for what? You know, this is really disgusting as far as I'm concerned, and it makes it extremely difficult. So they do not want the Palestinians to be independent as far as food is concerned. They don't want them to sustain, to provide for themselves. They don't want them to organize themselves to be able, because they're very resilient and they know that, and they will organize themselves and they will be able to survive until we get our act together in the West. Sorry. So this is the problem we have, and what I was trying to say, the point that I was trying to make is that these centers are simply a way to draw the crowd, especially from the northern Gaza. If you look right now, the past 4 days, nothing has come from GHF to the northern part of Gaza. So northern Gaza is an enclave that is simply not distributed by food. And for trucks, UN trucks, to get there, it's so complicated, and it doesn't get there every week. So these guys are not being fed. And by learning that food is available in the center of Gaza and then further south, I think the hope behind that, the plan, is to drag them out of the northern part of Gaza into the center and eventually to the Rafah crossing. And then from that, when you have enough of them there, then I believe that the Israeli will try to truck them out into the Sinai Peninsula on the Egyptian side of it. So that's I think the plan. And if you go back to what Trump has said, what Netanyahu has said, Smotrich and all these degenerates, they basically say that we don't want to live with the Arabs. We just want them to get out. And the only reason why we don't do it so violently and so in front of everyone is because the public is watching. And it's just simply going to make the United States look bad. And the Israelis already look bad, so they probably don't care. So the US is probably refraining on saying, do it, but do it in a way that looks good. And that's the GHF plan. That's the plan. A way of basically politicizing humanitarian relief to meet the political goal, which is to chuck out the Palestinians out of their land. And that's why people resigned. That's why Fletcher came, pretty hard on everybody in Israel and saying, what you guys are doing, it is so bloody illegal.
So I'm just going to bring this up here. This is a tweet by Mohammed Shahada. Israel is profiting big time from its genocide. The meager aid packs, as pictured here, Fred, amazing. A few Gazans received, a few received today were only entirely Israeli products, visible Hebrew writing on it. Basically, these are like sort of, bottom range dry grocery goods, you could say. There's a little bit of a zoom in there. You can see spaghetti. I don't know if these people eat spaghetti, but they do in Israel. And then some rice, some beans, maybe some sauce of some description, some vegetable oil. Could be some flour there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is flour and spaghetti is better, and a can of beans and so on. But really, the nutritional value. Don't forget that this is for a family. right?
Yeah.
Not for one
A
person,
whole
for
family.
a whole family, and they don't have small family. Although many of members of the family have been already, decimated during the last past a year and a half or two. So it's for me, as far as I'm concerned, is again, this is a lack of understanding of humanitarian relief, because there is part of humanitarian relief a very important notion that is nutrition. What you're going to provide doesn't have to be big, but the nutrients have to be the right ones. Right now, these people haven't eaten chicken, beef. They haven't eaten anything near to proteins, and good proteins. Not beans proteins. They need proper meats. They need fish. They need stuff that really is going to help them to avoid becoming sick. Because if you don't get this kind of protein, you don't have strength. You can't really survive and take care of your family.
So you mentioned Jose Andreas from I think his name is that the World Central Kitchen.
It's the World Central Kitchen CEO.
Yeah. So that model of creating these like small meals and having people queue up for them or put them in packages and then deliver them. This is like such a weird Western interpretation of how to look after and feed 1 million people. It just makes no sense to me. And so here is typical. These are those boxes that are basically what Americans would call care packages. So when they think of aid, they're just like, yep, we get all those products and then we'll do this. Nothing about providing bulk ingredients so people can, as you said, Freddie, can use the small satellite kitchens that have been set up by UNRA, and then cooking for many people, be able to manage the supply, the stock, being able to plan. That was already set up. And Israel and this clown and Joe Biden destroyed it, basically. They destroyed UNRWA. They destroyed the aid. They blocked the aid with the intent of these people want the Palestinians to starve to death, basically, or to flee because they're so desperate for food they'll go anywhere and do anything to get it. So here's the branding on the side. I can't think of a brand that's going to be damaged worse in the world history than this brand, GHF. But it's just so ridiculous. But Americans are patting themselves on the back, watching Fox News, saying we're feeding those poor Palestinians. We're and only America can do such wonderful things for the world. That's how generous we are with our dollars, right? Yeah. That's what they believe. I know it's ridiculous, but this is what people tell themselves in America. And it's what the news presenters tell their audiences to make people feel good about the fact that America is a co-belligerent with Israel in massacring all these people, and that America has fully supported this blockade. And I'm going to point here why we're on the subject, okay? Why we're on this subject. Let's take a look at somebody, an interesting person of interest, which I think you'll appreciate. This is Donald Trump's special envoy for everything in the world. He's sort of like, I guess, the hand of the king, you could say. The hand of if you watch Game of Thrones, the hand. Here's the hand. We'll hand up on stage. Steve Witkoff, okay? Steve Witkoff, who said, a couple weeks ago, we'd love to deliver aid, but it's just so complicated logistically. Is it? Is it really that complicated? You just let all those trucks in that are all queued up outside the Rafah border crossing. So I've said here, and to me it's kind of obvious at this point, so what I'm going to say should not shock anybody. Steve Witkoff works for the Israelis, okay? Whether literally or figuratively, to me it doesn't really matter. He is acting as an operative who ultimately answers to the Israelis, whether that's Netanyahu, the government in Israel, the lobby, whatever. Look past all the talk and look at the results since Trump came in office. This guy was in charge. And look at what's happening now. And look where things are headed. Look at the maps that we're showing you here. Look at the grand strategy of all this. Tell me Steve Witkoff is not an Israeli operative. I mean, just short of calling him an Israeli agent. He's doing everything for Israel. All of this game of him being at odds with Netanyahu and calling him out on Shabbat right after Trump got elected and all. You remember all that? carry on, and that we're going to do a deal. And now he's flipped. He's basically a gatekeeper defending everything Israel's doing and blaming Hamas for everything going wrong. So that's the Israeli playbook. The Israeli playbook is make negotiations impossible and then blame the other side for not accepting like ridiculous, inhumane, quote, deal. And that's exactly what Steve Witkoff is doing. He works for the Israelis. Make no mistake about it. Does not work for the United States people or the government. Steve Witkoff works for Israel, 110%. And everything he has done, all of the things that have come into place, the direction this disaster is headed, it's everything Israel wants. It's everything Netanyahu wants. Steve Witkoff, who has all the leverage, is handing it this genocide and this mass ethnic cleansing of the native Palestinian population in this region. He's handing it to Israel on a silver platter. That's what's happening. And you can talk all you want. He can say this, say that. Oh, this back and forth flip-flopping doesn't matter. So I'm sorry to drop that rant, but this exactly what's happening. This game is now over. Okay, I think people can see past the facade. If they don't see by now, Freddie, you're really not seeing anything. Go ahead.
Yes, he's in the same league as John Bowler and others. He's anyone that has been dealing and that has been sent to Gaza. Perhaps even at the beginning, he might have had some decent, intention to do well. He's entrusted by the president of the United States. He's a corporate guy, so he's entrusted because he's kind, he's nice, he's probably good at talking, he's intelligent, no doubt. And so if you look at both of them, Witkoff and Bowler, these two guys, when they finished their conversation with Hamas, they all said, these are nice guys. These are people that actually, there is a great chance we can get a truce here. We can actually get a long-term peace, They want it. So they were very genuine about that. That's my view on it. I think they were genuine about their interaction with Hamas. But the reality kicked in. And the reality kicked in is that their president in the United States, his president in the United States is, I wouldn't say he's answering to Israel, but Israel is still a sovereign nation as far as they're concerned. They say, you don't get to tell us what to do in our country. And it doesn't matter how much you're going to do or whatever you're going to do. At the end of the day, you cannot operate in Israel and in the occupied territories, Palestinian territories, without Israel consent. That's period. Doesn't matter if you're American, you're a friend of Trump, you cannot do anything there. So there's no point to trying to negotiate any deal or pass any deal with Hamas, because at the end of the day, you're going to need to get Israel to get involved. Israel is going to have to say, well, I agree or don't disagree. So it's a waste of time. You're going to discuss with the wrong guy. There's no point to talk with Hamas. Hamas will accept something that is reasonable. It's quite clear of it. They've said it many times. They've drawn the line. They say that's what we're happy to Israel. We actually want to get rid of the hostages. It's just a burden for them. But the problem that you have is that the political agenda of Israel is not aligned with Hamas being there, with the Palestinian being there in the long run. The political agenda of Israel is to have no Palestinian in the West Bank. I mean, look at today. The deal was done last week, but today, 22 settlements in the West Bank was authorized. 22 settlements. You get only 186 settlements that are illegal that have been authorized by the government, and today 22 more. I mean, the West Bank has become a sponge. That place is like, there's no way you can call it occupied territory. It's Israeli. And there's a couple of small enclaves there and little dots here and there. That is now the West Bank. It's only a matter of time. There's no more West Bank. So the agenda is clear. And the United States agenda and political stance is very clear. Now, sending these guys for PR purposes with talking to Hamas is not going to get the job done. Why? Because they don't want the job to be done, because Israel has already told them what they want. But the problem is, until the international community, especially Europe, come and they act together, which they're trying to, because they're starting to feel it home. This is the only reason why they're doing it. If everybody, people like us, anybody that is, didn't say anything about it, get on with their life, looking the other way, our governments will do nothing about it. They'll just go along because they've always been pro-Israel, and there's always going to be in Europe protections of Israel and the right of Israel to defend itself and all that story that would be sold. But the reality of it is what is that politically, it's becoming extremely challenging for in Netherlands, even in Germany, out of all the countries, the second largest supporter of Israel behind the US. And then France is now coming out. So there's a lot of politics there to embarrass Trump. We all get that, of course. But the reality is that at home, it's just, this is not going on very well. And it could be a major problem because people are starting to take this into their own hands. If the government is not going to move, if we're not going to put some serious sanctions, I'm going to tell you more and more countries are going to start to organize themselves from a citizen movement. Yeah, that's what we're going to see, more citizen movement. And I think our governments knows that. They have the intelligence. They know what people are prepared to do. Because we cannot simply be cautioning a genocide that has been live broadcasted for more than 2 years. It's just simply not acceptable. And it discredits any kind of organization, international or not, that is involved with this Gaza or with Palestinian project, if you will. And the only mean possible, because the political solutions is what's going to solve this problem, is by recognizing Palestine as a state. Now, whether you agree or not, that's up to you. It's not for me to tell you what's the best solution. I'm not Palestinian, so I'm not there to tell you, well, I think you should, split and go back to the borders 1968 or whatever. This is not for me to say. This is the Palestinian that needs to decide what is acceptable for them and to find a middle ground where they can find peace, reestablish an economy and social structures, not living in fear, and rebuild themselves from there. And that is our responsibility, especially Britain, because Britain has that history with the Palestinians and, of course, the creation of the State of Israel. So surely we should see a very strong stance from the Brits as far as that. And as soon as they mention it, you can see it's such a hot topics, in the parliaments, wherever. As soon as you talk about two-state solutions, oof, you're touching the purse of many parliamentarians.
Yeah. Well, the debate invariably goes to, is there a state left for the Palestinians? But I think, a lot of people are viewing it now. They know that the two-state solution is not physically viable, but that it provides a step out of this disaster and then towards something hopefully better, or to save the lives of the surviving Palestinians, that the recognition of that state would do that as well. And so, Trump has his ideas about, redeveloping it. Jared Kushner, they just see real estate there. They see Dubai. They see some opportunities to get rich for the next couple of generations. I think this is quite obscene and shameful by the president to have been doing that, playing around with that at the end of January and the beginning of February, considering all the suffering that's going on. But back to to Mr. Witkoff, okay? And you talked about, the sovereignty. Definitely Israel's exerting its sovereignty, but yet it demands weapons and cash from the U.S., from Germany, from Britain. France also helps them on many different levels, and some other countries. And so, but the U.S. doesn't get sovereignty in America. The Israeli lobby dictates our foreign policy. And this might come as a shock to some people, but the Israeli lobby hand-selected Donald Trump's entire cabinet. And I'm telling you right now, folks, they hand-selected this man that we're looking at here to be Donald Trump's special envoy. This was approved by the Israeli lobby before it was announced. Okay? So my point here is, folks, is that means that Steve Witkoff, if he was approved by the Israeli lobby, as Pete Hegseth was, as Tulsi Gabbard was, as Mike Waltz was, Donald Trump's former national security advisor, and absolutely Marco Rubio, who is a child of the Israeli lobby. Okay, his whole career he owes to the Israeli lobby, to Paul Singer and these other billionaires that have bankrolled that guy and his entire political career, and who will bankroll him for his presidential run in 2028, which he wants really bad. Marco Rubio is foaming at the mouth to be president in 2028, and that's just why he is adopted the attitude he has. So if Witkoff was appointed by the Israelis, okay, you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I'll get your comment on this, Freddie, because this was just extraordinary what happened 2 weeks ago. There was a hostage named Eden Alexander, who is basically an American hostage. They become American as soon as they're captured. Okay, so he's an American hostage. So he's a Jewish American, maybe a dual passport holder. I don't have the details of his Israeli nationality. So Steve Witkoff, this man here, negotiated with Hamas, and that the terms were, we'll release Eden Alexander, this high-profile hostage, okay? We'll release him, but you have to allow food and water into Gaza as a quid pro quo. So Hamas, in good faith, released this person in perfect health, okay? He eats better than Palestinians, as do most of the hostages, or sorry, POWs. Be careful what we call them, because many of them are soldiers. So this is a POW, not a hostage. This is a soldier in the IDF, okay? So Witkoff gets the deal. They release them. They don't follow through. They don't give Hamas. They don't allow any aid in. They keep the starvation, the blockade in. So they lied to get the release of this young man. Witkoff and Trump and the Israelis lied in order to, and they all did a victory lap. Do you remember in the press? It was a big celebration. They did a big production out of this. So they got their W for the media, for the politics, but they didn't give anything in return. So tell me this, Fred, why would Hamas want to negotiate with the Israelis or the Americans on anything after this? Because they're quite clearly stabbed in the back. And the American reply to this would be, well, they're just terrorists. We don't have to give them what they want. And the Israeli argument is, well, we don't negotiate with terrorists. You just did. So what they've done is sabotaged any future negotiations. And I'm going to blame this guy, that guy, Steve Witkoff. He's the guy to blame. He's responsible. He's the Secretary of State extraordinaire, not Rubio. Rubio is nowhere near this disaster site. They've got him doing other things. They've got Rubio chasing students out of the country for criticizing Israel. That's Rubio's big accomplishment, is deporting students, for, speaking out against a genocide. That's your big achievement, little Marco. And so, Fred, I have to say, this is the worst thing you can do as a country, is to renege on such a high profile. Simple exchange. They did. And I have to blame this guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is not a diplomat, so he has no understanding of what diplomacy takes, and more importantly, understanding diplomacy not in the short term. This is not about scoring a political point, right? This is really about establishing trust. This is about trying to move forward, with an understanding that one can trust the other. That's what negotiations are about. You make concessions, and the other side make concessions, and then you build trust. And that's what it's all about. I think what Hamas was under the impression is that the American was not going through the Israeli to negotiate directly. They went directly to Hamas. And I think it gave them the impression that the Israeli was sick with the Israeli about, the American was sick about Israel's way of handling these negotiations for a ceasefire. And they thought that the American could be trusted. Well, big mistake. That's rule number one. Do not trust. I think, ask the Ukrainian, they'll tell you. And yeah, I mean, this is what it is. And as you say, rightly so, this is a prisoner of war. This is a POW. He was in the IDF. He was in tanks, I think, if I remember well, in the northern Gaza. I mean, this is someone that was participated from day one, in the incursion into the Gaza Strips, We don't know how many shells he fired or whatever. It's irrelevant. What matters is this is someone that has taken up the uniform. He's not a hostage. He's a prisoner of war. And on a good faith, as you said, they let him go. And there's just this complete bench of clown, and it's just irresponsible. You know, when you're a diplomat, this is stuff you just don't do. You know, just say, look, I can't accept that. But when you have a deal and you bring it back to get it green lighted by, you know, the ground chef, you know, then that's a done deal if it's come back green lighted. But if you do a deal at this level, especially with Arabs, you do a deal and you cannot be trusted. My piece of advice to Wyckoff, just never go back and sit down with Hamas. You might not come back, because that's a high treason. This is, you know, basically a treason and going against every principle of war. If you want to call it a war, then there are still principles that applies in hostage release and negotiations. And if you don't respect that, you can't be trusted. Don't show your face again. You know, he's burned.
And what were they asking for? They're asking for maybe some kind of a brief ceasefire and then allowing food and water and medical supplies in. And Israel's reaction was to then bomb the remaining hospitals in Gaza and then claim that there's a secret Hamas base underground. I mean, enough already of these people are just beyond the pale. As a society, their political body is a joke. You can't take them seriously. The only thing you can take them seriously on is that they're cold-blooded killers. That's it. You know, in terms of negotiations, as you said, diplomacy, forget it. You can't. And they've killed any of the top-ranking Palestinian leaders. So there's nobody left to negotiate. That's another Israeli tactic, which is kill the opposite side's leaders and lead negotiators, so that Israelis can go to the public and say, they don't have any leadership. These people are lost. The problem with the Palestinians is they have no leaders because you killed them all. And whoever you didn't kill is sitting in an Israeli gulag like Marwan Barghouti for the last 40 years or something stupid like that. I mean, these people are just too much, but they come in front of our Congress, our Senate, they come on our media, and they talk of these absurdities. And our talking heads in the West, American new pundits and hosts on like Fox, these airheads, will just sit there and just nod. And then Congress, they'll get on their knees and like worship Netanyahu or some of these war criminals. And like, this is just perfectly normal. And they're allowed to literally get away with murder. This is another piece here, Fred, so the dark side of Gaza relief, a closer look. Just to explain to us, you know, what's going on in this piece here.
Well, in this piece, there's different things that's going on. This is about describing, if you will, the various operations, who is who. It's got a lot of information, and it was a great piece that I thought it was really worth also publishing from the main press with Robert Inlakesh reports. And this is about, you know, weaponizing aid, which is we've heard and we've seen many reports, even in mainstream. This is unbelievable. We've seen, and we can start to hear now, mainstream medias talking about Israel weaponizing aid. You know, I was listening to that on CNN. Others as a channel in the UK as well. They're more timid in the UK, but it's starting to come up now because, of course, this organization GHF, these Gaza Humanitarian Foundations, has just simply got, you know, bad press from the get-go because nobody trusted them, and very quickly those that have investigated, like Min Press, myself, many others, Blumenthal probably, and others, they all very quickly saw that this is a smoke screen. You know, it's a mixed Wall Street Zionist ex-CIA operatives coming together with some world chef, you know, friends of Clinton and Haiti, and these are these guys. You know, so why does the former CEO of the World Central Kitchen, already operating in Gaza, needs to come in the background in Geneva and the foundations right? And basically surround himself with killers, with mercenaries, in order to come up with a project that is mainly an Israeli idea, which America was happy to back up, if you will. But the whole idea is that we need to see who these people are, where they come from, what their backgrounds are, and we need to, more importantly, be able to identify every actors in this particular piece, because there's going to be basically accountability. I don't know when, but there's going to have to be some accountability. And if anything happens, we need to know who is behind that. And what really amazes me the most is someone like Nate Mook. That's really just literally, we have the documents clearly showing that he is the founder of GHF, and he denies it. He said, no, I'm not, it's not me. What do you mean it's not you? Your name is on the founding documents, So, but I'm not surprised, because I know these guys. I know where they come from, who they're hanging around with, because we investigate them. So we know what we're dealing with here, And you got to go back to 2010. You got to go back to the Clinton foundations, and you got to go back to this all, kind of people, that are known to be known criminals for many years, and level of corruptions, and it doesn't matter. And then, of course, you bring that little touch of intelligence, former CIA. So you get all these kind of, retired CIA guys getting, new jobs, in Geneva, heading the foundations. I mean, come on, man. This is not humanitarian aid. It has nothing to do. It's a military intelligence operation to achieve a strategic goal, which is to kick out the Palestinian out of their ancestral land. Period. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. So Robert Inlakesh says that weaponized aid, Wall Street Zionists, and ex-CIA operatives take over Gaza relief. That pretty much says it all. It's a bunch of spooks. And to make it even more interesting, we'll bring this up shortly, but it's even admitted by one Israeli MP. I saw a statement this morning. I think it was one of the extreme, not as extreme as the Smotrich and Ben Gavir's of the world, but Avigdor Lieberman complained to the Israeli press that he said, quote, Mossad should not be funding this aid to the Palestinians. So he kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, I think, with that. So he's admitted that Israeli intelligence are paying for this. So you've got CIA, you've got Mossad, okay? There's enough spooks there, and all these fake NGOs, and the new interim CEO, if I'm not mistaken, looking at his LinkedIn, is he former USAID?
Yeah, that's Acri, John Acri. So yeah, big link with the OTI from the USAID operation in South America and in the Caribbean as well. So this, I mean, USAID has always been a CIA front, for over the carbon operation. Doesn't matter, but this is the how they funnel money and cash and whatever. So this is what John Acri, I don't want to just obviously point the finger at him. I mean, he's accepted the job as an interim executive director to replace Jack Wood. But when you look at the background, it's simply not reassuring. So again, there is a component here, definitely from the intelligence realm, if you will. And then you mentioned Avigdor Lieberman, but even earlier on Monday, you had Yair Lapid that came, the head of the opposition at the Knesset. And he said, hey, listen, guys, this GHF scam, it's actually sponsored by Israel taxpayers' money. So if the taxpayers' money is actually being used for that, surely we should take the credit and score some, some points, in the court of public opinion. At least, bank on what we are spending our money for, even if it's not great and it looks pretty bad on television. At least let's get some points here. But so the whole thing becomes comical almost. United Nations Tom Fletcher's as one of these organizations, and their, the inability for them to operate in such a volatile environment with all the political, circumstances and that comes with it, if you will. So for Yair Lapid to see that and put basically the Netanyahu Smotrich government on the spot, and then after that Lieberman come in it, I mean, it's quite clear that, of course, political, but don't get me wrong, but the reality is that this is not some kind of a UAE money or Qatari money or anything. This is an Israeli sponsored money, a sponsored operation, that because they will never leave someone else calling the shots in the Gaza Strip. And they know that if you're going to take money from someone else, then you're going to have to let them do what they want to do and their own plans. So they spend the money, they try to do what they do, because we all know that this has nothing to do with humanitarian relief, right? So that's why you get all these kind of individuals and names of intelligence, former CIA, all these people attached to this particular initiative.
Yeah, this is the report I saw here. I just remembered. Former Israeli ministers, plural, hint Israelis Mossad behind the controversial Gaza humanitarian aid op. Avigdor Lieberman said in a tweet that the money for humanitarian aid comes from Mossad and the Ministry of Defense. Well, there you go. That's an admission there. So when we saw these cheap care packages, right, Fred, with the pound stretcher, dollar store contents in them. So somebody's invoicing for supplies and then billing, governments, I assume, paying the bills. So, or somebody's putting up the money. It's probably very easy to use this as a money laundering operation for maybe a couple $100 million or something like that. So there might be some, well-heeled billionaires in the background, I would imagine. Maybe.
Yeah,
Loaning up or drug money, maybe. I'm not sure. Or organ trafficking. It's Israel, by the way. So
I call it the perm index of aid relief. That's the when the financiers and the Mossads, because that's what perm index was at the end of the day. So this is the same kind of outfit. And funny enough, it's located at the same place in Geneva, where everything is allowed to happen. But I think we're going to be for a big surprise, because now the problem is that the foundations are highly watched in Geneva, and when there's a complaint, they don't like it. Especially another foundation, NGO, saying, "Look, we got to go look into these guys. This is not legit. This is not great, and they're going to endanger other people's life." So that's might reveal. And what I was reading actually the court papers on this, and they were saying that we can do nothing until we see actually food on the ground, that they're actually delivering food in Gaza. When we see that, then we can start to act. So this is still ongoing in Switzerland. I'm following it at the moment. So that's going to be interesting to see, because obviously they're going to have to open a little bit, the dockets and show exactly who these people are, what is really behind that. And it's going to be interesting. Let's see if we can get to the data or not, or whether Israel is going to shut it down, with their phones, We'll see.
We'll see, Fred. I mean, in the meantime, it seems like Trump is trying really hard to distance himself from this whole scene, as all the European governments are basically having to, cover their rear end because they've been supporting this monstrosity for the last year and a half. The U.S. is in a really difficult bind because they can't pivot like the Europeans can, because they're not maybe owned to the degree that the U.S. is owned by Israel. Donald Trump himself is owned by the Israelis, 100%. He cannot do anything without their sort of approval. So he's basically a functionary of the mafia, if you will. He himself has shown to have exert no sovereignty whatsoever. The United States of America, allegedly the most powerful country in the world, cannot dictate or tell Israel to do anything. That's the reality of the situation, and it's a disaster for humanity. So we'll try to pick up this story. We'll keep an eye on this. Obviously, there's more reporting to do. Freddie Ponton, independent researcher, journalist, 21st Century Wire. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we had a little snafu technically yesterday. We seem to have ironed out most of that. But we came back, and because people were saying, you know, we want to see more. So we're giving you a little more of a deep dive. The articles are up at 21stcenturywire.com. Fred's done some great research as well, which he shared for our readers, so that they can be better informed about how all this stuff works. Go to 21stcenturywire.com, and you'll be able to read all of the links, see all the links that we've showed you today in the program. But Freddie Ponton, thank you again for joining us on the Midweek Wire. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
And there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That is Freddie Ponton. That's all we've got time for today. Again, we're coming back for part 2. This is part 2 of this story about the Gaza humanitarian relief scam, which is exactly what it is. And I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We really appreciate you joining us midweek. We'll have something for you on Sunday for the Sunday Wire, hopefully something special. But in the meantime, take care, everybody, and I hope you stay well. And we'll give you a little piece here from Peyote for President, the Palestinian children. Take care. All the best.
All of the pictures left unpainted, all of the games they left unplayed, all the laughter in the playground, all of the arts they never made. Ghost faces of a million Palestinian children. All of those voices left in silence, all with their names written in kind, lest their bodies pulled from rubble, lifeless empty dolls to find. Ghost faces of a million Palestinian children. What are the songs they've never written? What are the words they'll never sing? And the darkness of the nightmare, inescapable that rings. The ghost faces of a million Palestinian children. I hear the crying, helpless children, God's most precious and most dear. I hear them begging for the reason. How could you ever leave us here? I close the eyelids of a million Palestinian children. So what do we really stand for? Is this how our future's made? And when we ever find the courage to stand up unafraid, I tear away the persecution of the Palestinian children. Rise up and be the guardians of the Palestinian children. To respect our obligation, every creed and every nation, 'cause every soul deserves protection. Save the Palestinian children. Save the Palestinian children.